What a fascinating set of scriptures for this Sunday. We're all very much aware of the fact that come Wednesday, we leave ordinary time and go into the Lenten season for 2017. Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, and so much will change on Wednesday. But look what Mother Church gives us today. That first reading, taken from the prophet Isaiah. The Israelite community had been in exile in Babylon. Many of those who had been carried away to Babylon had died. Their children didn't even know what it was like to live outside of slavery. And so they had begun to believe that God, who had brought them into the world, formed them as his very own people, had somehow forgotten them. And Isaiah says, no, that's not true. Can a mother forget the child of her womb? God has not forgotten. And in God's time, God will act. And let's jump over to that gospel passage. Jesus teaching, don't worry. It just isn't necessary. Because God takes care of us. Look what he's done with nature. And don't you understand that you are so much more important than the flowers of the field? God, the Father, will take care of us. So stop all that needless worry. Live in the present moment. Rejoice in the care that God gives. Be the people of God. But I want to look at Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, because Paul does something in this letter that I don't think any one of us truly believes. Paul did. Paul believed it with his entire heart and soul. And that's why he could write to Corinth and tell the community there what he told them and what we read, what Mary read this morning. First of all, Paul uses two images to talk about the church in Corinth. Servants of Christ. But the word in Greek that Paul used is not the word that we would choose to talk about servitude or servants. Paul uses the Greek word for those rowers down in the hold of the ship who kept the ship moving forward. And without those rowers, the ship would not reach its destination and would not complete its goal. Those rowers, with the man up front beating out the rhythm on the drum, became one with the ship that they were rowing. The ship could not do what it needed to do without the rowers, and the rowers could not get to their destination without the ship. So they truly do become one. Just as you and I, through baptism and confirmation, are servants of Jesus Christ, We are one with Christ. Christ is one with us. We are one body. Without Jesus, we do not get to our destination. Without Jesus, we don't really have an identity, a person. The other image that Paul uses to talk about the community at Corinth is that they are stewards of the mysteries of God. And we have to understand in our own time that stewards were slaves. But not slaves as in our history here in the United States of America. Stewards were more like indentured servants, if you will. They were slaves who were tremendously faithful to their owners. Slaves who, because they were of one accord with their owner, could, over a period of time, buy their freedom from their owner. And so, the steward, the administrator, acted in the name of the owner. The steward administered all of the material goods of the owner. And if the steward did a good job over a period of 7 years or so, then the steward was released from bondage and became a free man. We are stewards of the mysteries of God. Not slaves, but we are working toward our own freedom. Working alongside Jesus Christ, the Son of God, so that we might work with Jesus to bring not only ourselves, but our families and the entirety of the created order to the freedom that God has destined for all of it, to the glory that God has prepared for all of us, for all of creation. What Paul is writing to the Corinthians in this section of this first letter, we might better express in the phrase that we are the body of Christ. Without Christ, we have no body. Without the body, Christ cannot continue to do and effect the salvation of the world for which he came. You and I are his hands and his feet. We are the heart of God that beats in the world today and gives love and gives mercy and works for God's justice. How marvelous, how incredibly wonderful that God has chosen each and every one of us to continue the saving work of Jesus Christ and to see in us the very Christ who was born, who taught, who suffered, who died, who rose, who lives now eternally. And all these graces, all this gift is given not for us individually, but it's given for the world. Paul closes this portion of this letter with an interesting phrase, an interesting thought. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will manifest the motives of our hearts. And here it is. And then everyone will receive praise from God. I read that. I prayed it. And I thought, how is that possible? Everyone will receive praise from God. What about those who don't deserve that praise? What about those who would enslave us? What about those who would take away our freedom, remove our newspapers from the newsstands, and close the television stations that report the truth? Everyone will receive praise from God. Paul was absolutely so convinced that God, in His power and in His majesty, could fill us with the Christ, could call each and every one of us into daily conversion, and that we freely would choose truth and justice and love, and the entire world would be saved because of us, the body of Christ. That Paul could sit and write this letter and say, everyone will receive praise from God. I'm ready. Let's go home.